So yeah, I'll go quickly through this. I will touch on some of the operation connectivity stuff. If you didn't catch it in the commissioner call yesterday or in our email this morning. So you'll get sort of the broad strokes. And then once TEA makes either a recording available or a slide deck, we'll be sure to send that out to y'all. So operation connectivity is not the only thing going on, if you can believe it. There's even more announcements that TEA has made in recent weeks. So I'm just going to kind of highlight them really quickly. First off, a couple things related to the to the on-campus requirements. First off, TEA has amended its guidance regarding districts' ability to require on-campus attendance. And so what this previously districts or TEA had said, no, you can't just single out students and bring them back if they're not doing well in this remote learning environment. In early November, they changed their tune on that and said, okay, we see the need for this if your districts or if your students, if you have certain students that just aren't attending consistently or aren't really, this online learning environment isn't working for them, you can bring them in, you can end remote learning for them. And to do that, you have to submit an attestation. And you can see that that's linked right there. There in green, and the PDF version of this that's published to the FAC website. Again, those links are all clickable. If you want to go see it on TEA's guidance, it's page 20 of their attendance and enrollment. Their attendance and enrollment FAQ document, and so you can go read more there. The TEA also amended its guidance regarding campus closures. I know we got a couple questions from Region 1 districts about this in the previous weeks. How long can we close if there's a confirmed outbreak in our campus or staff or students have close contact? Yesterday, TEA said that if you are having trouble staffing your campus because there's been a confirmed outbreak, you can now close for up to 14 calendar days. Previous guidance said 5 instructional days. So this is extending that a little bit in the event that that a significant number of your instructional staff is impacted due to the outbreak. And so TEA has said that they provide this request form. There's no specific requirement that you have to get state approval for this, but TEA has asked districts that if they are trying to close down for on-campus instruction for an extended period, that they fill out this form, and you can find more information there, page 11 of that, again, that attendance and enrollment document. I should point out that, or just clarify rather, that this is closing to on-campus instruction. The expectation would be and also if you still want to meet that 75,600 minute requirement, you would switch to remote instruction during that time, or if you have enough staff still, you could switch to a hybrid type model. We're familiar with that from TEA's guidance around high schools, right? You can switch to a hybrid model where some students attend some days and attend in person some days, and then attend remotely. They sort of break your student population into cohorts and sort of cycle them through campus every other day, something like that. And so this is just another tool in the toolbox for you guys if this situation comes up for y'all. So just be aware that TEA has sort of opened that up for y'all. So that's a little bit of good news. A little bit of bad news is TEA has included some details in their latest guidance, sort of outlining what consequences there could be for non-compliance with its pandemic-related rules. They said that for districts that don't follow the agency rules that they've laid out, on the COVID-19 site, I think particularly related to on-campus instruction and the requirements, related to remote instruction. Those districts would only be entitled to half the operational minutes they would have normally claimed for each day they are out of compliance. And so TEA goes on to say that this could require districts to add additional days to the calendar or additional minutes to the calendar, depending how much of a penalty there is for you. And so you may have to add additional days or minutes to meet that 75,600 operational minute requirement. And you can find more information again on page 29 of that attendance and enrollment document. We have been getting some questions about the additional day school year incentive created by House Bill 3. Some districts are curious, is it too late for me to participate in this? The answer is no. You can still make the necessary changes to your calendar. I do want to point out again that to receive the funding, it's you have to meet both the 180-day requirement and the 75,600 minute requirement. And so if you're meeting the minute requirement, but you hadn't met the day requirement, you'll need to first extend your calendar to 180 days. And then days after that, you can add up to 30 additional half days. And then those days, the days in excess of 180, those are the ones that would generate additional funding under this incentive. And TA has clarified that the ADSI ADA can include remote ADA that's generated through your synchronous or asynchronous programs. And again, you still have to meet all the on-campus requirements to offering that on-campus instruction. But if you're offering an additional day, you can have remote students attending that way. TEA said, while it's not too late to make the calendar changes, if you did want to get it, start getting those days reflected on your summary finance, you would need to make sure that the additional ADA that you're going to generate through the ADSI incentive is included in the attendance projections that you're going to submit on December 14th. So if you do think your district is going to extend the school calendar this way, be sure that your attendance projections reflect that. And of course, the prior purchase reimbursement program, just a couple bullet points on that. Go sign up right now, even if you don't attend right now, but go sign up so that way you at least get the recordings of it as soon as they're made available, and you get all of the slide decks and everything. And again, we'll send that out as well, but there's the link there to go sign up for it. It's just a couple high level bullet points on that. It was funded with $420 million from the Coronavirus Relief Fund. Again, that's part of the CARES Act. Commissioner Morath pointed out on the call yesterday that the Coronavirus Relief Fund covers expenses incurred prior to December 30th. And so that I think that he said the funds expire December 30th. I think what he meant is it covers costs incurred before December 30th, but we'll get some clarity on that here at 9:30, and we'll send that out. I think a question came in on that. Let me see what that was. Yes, thank you, Oscar, for grabbing that link for everybody. So yes, the period covers from after May 20th, right? That's when the TDEM thing ended. So May 21st through fairly certain December 30th, the costs incurred during that period. And it's going to work similar to the TDEM program from before. It's going to be 75% reimbursement of eligible expenses. The application opens today. So hopefully going through that TDEM process helped y'all identify those costs, and you're ready, chomping at the bit, ready to submit those things to TEA. The commissioner announced that there'll be 3 application windows, the first of which is closing December 1st. So hopefully you guys didn't have anything planned next week. I don't think there's any, special days off or anything next week. So I think you guys should have plenty of time to get that all wrapped up before December 1st. If not, my understanding now is that that's the first of 3 application windows. So you will get another bite at the apple. But I should point out that there's gonna, my understanding is If there's more reimbursement requested than the $420 million that's allocated to it, they could reduce that 75%, and it's sort of a first come, first serve situation. And so if you get your stuff in early on, I think you have the highest likelihood to secure the highest level of reimbursement for your district. So it's not great news and not a great situation, but if you can possibly get it in before that first window closes on December 1st, I would highly encourage you to do so.
Yeah, I was just real quick, Josh, I was just on a call on another Zoom, and I heard one district say, oh yeah, we spent 11 million. So that 420, and that's one of our districts.
Yeah.
420 now seems like not very much at all if you consider statewide. So please, get in that first batch.
I think I saw a survey from TEA that said what they had seen from districts from May 21st through the present, which I think now is about a month ago, districts had reported $428 million of expenses. I think, I'm not sure how many districts participate in that survey or what that is, but yes, regardless, I think that money is going to go very quickly. And so in the interest of securing the most money for your district, I would advise you to really, get to work on that. So in the interest of freeing up some time, I'm going to move very quickly to the next couple slides. These next slides just kind of look at sort of sum up what we're seeing for the next legislative session. First, I'll start with some election results. Of course, many were expecting large gains by Texas Democrats over 2019. That little graphic shows the partisan makeup for the previous session. And we kind of, there were just many polls indicated that there would be large Democratic gains. We saw several leading Democrats file for Speaker of the House. So they were confident that they would be able to control the House. But even after all that, we had 150 races and tons of money spent on ads and lots of polling, and we ended up with exactly the same partisan balance in the House. So again, it's going to be 83 Republicans and 67 Democrats. For the Senate, there wasn't quite as much drama as there was over in the House, at least not as much discussion of a possible flip. There was only one competitive seat, and that was Senate District 19, which is in South San Antonio and sort of stretches west over to Big Bend. And that seat was picked up, you can see there, by the Democrats. And so the balance of power switched just a little bit from 19 Republicans, 12 Democrats to 18 Republicans and 13 Democrats. We don't expect this to have any real material change on the way the Senate functions. The Senate can kind of make up its own rules. At least that's how the House describes it. They always poke fun at the Senate for sort of making new rules each session. But there used to be a requirement, the bar to bring a bill to the floor of the Senate used to be higher. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick has since lowered that. He lowered it last session to 19, since that was the Republican majority. He's already said he's going to lower it to 18 because of the number of Republicans in the Senate. So again, it may make it harder to secure the votes, for final passage, but at least to bring things to the floor, we don't think that this change will impact anything significantly. Quickly switching over to bonds. This was the first bond cycle that we saw post Senate Bill 30. And again, Senate Bill 30 is the bill that was passed last session that requires districts to break up propositions according to the category in which they fall, right? So prior to House Bill 30, you could put all your bonds, all your propositions into one, or all your projects into one proposition and submit that to the voters for approval. With Senate Bill 30, you had to break them up for certain categories, natatoriums, performing arts facilities, technology. I believe there's 5 or 6 different categories. And so this is kind of interesting to see what the impacts of that is. You can see still, even with that, we saw a majority of bonds pass and an overwhelming majority of the dollars on the ballot approved by voters. And really what that speaks to is, and what's kind of outlined here on this slide, is voters generally supported the major school construction bonds that were on the ballot, right? So to build school buildings, those saw higher levels of school support, or I mean, of voter support. And so of the 20 districts that saw multiple propositions on the ballot, 7 of them saw voters sort of split their support. In a lot of those cases, they supported the major school construction bond, and actually they supported the technology bonds in many cases. I think a lot of voters realize that in this time of remote learning, districts have increased technology costs, and they were generally supportive of that. What they weren't so supportive of was the athletic and performing arts bonds, or those extracurricular things. In instances where districts had those on the ballot, you know, not to say that they didn't pass, but those were the ones that were sort of singled out by voters and not approved in some cases. This was also the first election cycle post House Bill 3 in which districts could hold a voter approval tax rate election, previously called rollback election. You can see there were some mixed results there. Some districts going all the way up to the state max. I believe Arlington, Fort Worth, and Pringle Morse went all the way up to the 17-cent max above your tier 1 rate. And so 5 of them were successful. 7 districts did not. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the chat. Can you post a link to the Operation Connectivity application? We don't have the link to application. Oscar has published a link to the webinar. I'll publish it again here, where I think TA will announce, or will walk through the steps on how to apply. I checked this morning on the grants application page. I didn't see it. That's the same place where they posted the ESSER application and every other grant application. They may be putting it up there this afternoon. I'm not sure, but here at 9:30, I think we will learn more. And so here's a link for the webinar, and I would encourage you to at least sign up for it. That way you can watch the recording and get all of the information about the Operation Connectivity application. All right. One other thing I wanted to mention about the voter approval tax rate election is next year. I just want to make sure, I've said this before in previous presentations, but I just want to make sure everyone's aware that you can increase, you can temporarily increase your M&O rate next summer, 2021, without having a voter approval tax rate. So if your district needs those additional revenues to offset, these expenses related to COVID, or whatever your district may need, you can adopt those pennies, those additional pennies temporarily. If it's a 1-year adoption, the tax code allows you to do that because Governor Abbott declared a statewide disaster. And going forward, this has been used, or I guess in the past, this has been used, if there's been a major hurricane or other disaster in your district. So there's a couple of things that have to happen. The governor has to declare a disaster in your district, and since he has done that statewide, all districts now can utilize that provision of the tax code, where they can temporarily adopt those tier 2 pennies without going to the voters for them. So just something, this is another tool in the toolbox for you guys if you are interested in that. Just a couple more slides here and I'll wrap up. Just sort of big themes we're seeing going into the next session. Of course, Republicans maintain control of both chambers. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick will preside over the Senate. We will get a new speaker with the retirement of Dennis Bonnen. Representative Dade Phelan out of Beaumont is the presumptive speaker. They won't officially vote on it until January, but he has enough votes and we fully expect him to be elected speaker. He hasn't been particularly involved in education legislation in the past. This sort of last session, he was kind of involved in two bills that kind of touched on education. One was the anti-lobbying bill. He was supportive of that. So that's sort of a cause for concern, something we'll need to keep an eye on if that bill comes back. And then also he was a sponsor of Senate Bill 30, which I touched on earlier, is that bill that required the bond propositions to be broken up by category. So in logistically, we don't know how session's going to work. If you guys have been up to the Capitol during session, it's a big building, but it's full of staffers and lobbyists and advocacy groups and all sorts of people. And so, we don't know how testimony is going to work. We don't know what sort of social distancing protocols are going to be in place. I know that they're exploring sort of rapid testing of members. That way all members can go in the House, for example, they could all go and vote. It's less of a concern on the Senate just because there's fewer of them. But they're kind of working through all that right now. I know Representative Phelan has announced a bipartisan committee to kind of help him think through those issues and work through the logistical challenges of holding this session. In terms of the focus, we don't expect it to be heavily focused on education. Lawmakers have a ton of other things on their plate. Obviously, it's a redistricting year. They have a budget shortfall and also just general pandemic response. There's going to be a whole host of other things that are going to suck up the oxygen in the room. There could be some fixes to House Bill 3. Certainly there's been several identified, and I'm going to touch on a couple of those here in a bit. But we don't expect any major changes either on the accountability front or on the finance front this session. One thing to point out about the shortfall, yes, it is $5 billion right now, and that's a big number. But we think that the state has enough tools in its toolbox to sort of remedy that without making significant cuts to public education. They have the rainy day fund, they can delay the FSP payment. That alone, I think, would cover about $2 billion. And so again, they have enough tools where we think that they can, if things sort of, if that shortfall doesn't grow too much, they can fill it without making significant cuts. And so I'm just going to quickly go through some notable bills. There's some accountability bills here. One I'll point out is HB 220. It allows certain F-rated campuses to be exempt from interventions and sanctions, and it also gives them more funding. It gives them funding in line with what the campus would generate under an 1882 agreement. And so that could be, if you have some struggling campuses, that could be a useful tool if that bill passes. I believe that's from Bernal. So if you did have questions or you wanted to voice support of that bill, I think Representative Bernal would be the office to reach out to. Some notable bills on the finance side. House Bill 163 would provide the highest compensatory education weight to students experiencing homelessness. So right now, those students are funded based on the campus at which they attend because they don't have an address on file. With this bill, they would automatically receive the highest weight. And I believe the Comp Ed committee has already made this recommendation to the commissioner. So I believe that's the way it'll work for 2021. And then this bill would sort of solidify that in state law. I think that would be very helpful in terms of securing those resources for those students. House Bill 334 increases the direct spending requirement for the CTE allotment from 55% to 90%. I think this is just an effort to sort of maybe I don't think this representative is very educated and exactly what the impact that would have on districts in terms of tying their hands and being able to have flexibility with that funding. And so I think some education needs to go on with that representative there to truly understand the impacts of that. And then the last one I'll touch on, House Bill 523, would add a small and mid-sized district adjustment to the CTE allotment a lot of the, and it's, if you're familiar with how the special ed allotment works, this would just add a similar kind of adjustment for those small and mid-sized districts over to the CTE allotment. Here's some other topics that we're seeing emerging. Of course, property tax bills are very popular. I'm not going to go through all of these. Slides will be posted later on. One I will touch on is internet connectivity. Obviously, Operation Connectivity is helping with some of that. But I think there's still work that needs to be done. And across the state, our accountability team has pulled some data for all districts, and for y'all, I pulled out just Region 1 here. And I think that this information, if you want it more detailed, we can send it on. But I think things like this are important to share with legislators, sort of leading up to the session in terms of communicating the need that's out there for reliable internet access. And so if this is helpful, please share it out. This remote learning thing doesn't work if kids don't have reliable internet access. And so I think if we can make a really compelling argument that there's some portions of the community that don't have access to that, I think that'll really benefit our students. And then lastly, I know I've touched on this before, but I just want to, in terms of emerging themes we're seeing from lawmakers, this interest in school district fund balances and really this misconception on what they're used for. And really, as you can see with this quote here, this misconception on school districts' experiences during the shutdown last school year. And you can see, I mean, there's this conception with some legislative leadership that there's been savings that occurred last school year when when the schools were closed up to on-campus instruction. If that's been the case, that would be certainly a surprise to me. Maybe some savings in transportation and other areas, but you also saw less funding in those areas. So I think some education needs to go on here, but this sort of focus on school district fund balances is something that's it's occurred in the past, but we do see a lot of discussion on that from legislative leadership, both Representative Huberty and Senator Taylor over in the House. I'm sorry, over in the Senate, obviously. Excuse me. And so with that, I'll end. And if there's any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat.